So if you think about, for instance, let's do something that's local, that's really big, which is completely reimagining our energy supply for the islands, both Jersey and Guernsey, the Channel Islands, by creating a wind farm offshore. That's quite controversial, isn't it? Because wind farms stuff up the view. But that's much better than stuffing up the atmosphere, which is what fossil fuels do. And you can always take the wind farm away when you're done. And the other thing is people worry about birds, for instance. So research I've been doing over the last year on new kinds of nature businesses. For instance, you can paint one of the blades black. You can use radar to see the birds coming and switch them off. You can use sound to make the birds go somewhere else. And that's just above the water. Below the water, though, there's other things you can do, which is you can turn the stems of these giant windmills into reefs. And there's some great data coming out of America and other places where, particularly in the tropics, where they're wrapping them around with corals. And suddenly you create all these new reefs where there were none. And off Jersey, it's got a lot of sand out there, so we could create areas that are net positive for fish. And fishermen say, well, we can't go and fish in there anymore like we used to. That's really bad. But actually, just because they're not fishing in there, these fish grow much more readily there and populate other areas, and fish catches are going up. So, there's a different side to this sort of story. That's one example. Well, I think the first thing is hats off to Guernsey. It's already doing more than many others, certainly more than I think Jersey is doing, and that is that you've already got TIES, which is a sustainable stock exchange. You've got the Climate Fund, which also helps to attract funding on the climate space, and you've also got the Natural Capital Fund, which is a sort of kite mark for people who want to bring natural capital funds into the island. Now, the market today is nascent, it's new, so don't expect it all to flood in tomorrow, but that is showing Guernsey up as being a go-to place on these issues. And as this gets bigger and better over time, it should attract more money. What I think we're not doing enough of to compete well is that we're not providing fiscal incentives for people to come here. Now, if you take Luxembourg, for instance, why are all the corporate green bonds going there and not coming to Guernsey on TIES? We get a lot of corporate bonds, but the green bonds aren't coming here. They're mostly going over to Luxembourg. Why? Luxembourg can give you grants of hundreds of thousands of euros to help set up your fund there, which you can pay back once the fund is successful. They introduce you to a whole ecosystem of lawyers, accountants, and people who have the skills needed to set up your fund. And crucially, they offer access to soft money because they have development banks. We don't have a development bank in Guernsey or Jersey or the Isle of Man. Maybe that's something we should think of. So we should think of fiscal incentives, explaining the ecosystem of expertise we have more effectively, and possibly providing access to soft money. All of that will bring sustainable finance here, because it's still nascent. People need a bit of de-risking. Originally, it was all about tax. People outside think it's still about tax, but it isn't really about tax much these days. It's about governance. People want to have a safe place in a sterling environment that they can use to invest in other areas. And both islands provide that in spades. It's very transparent, it's very fast. It may not be the cheapest, but it's extremely high quality. And I think that's really what attracts family money here. It's a safe place to do business. And so it's less about tax than it was. But, finance is going to shift over the coming decades. I'm at the moment sitting on panels in Jersey where we're reimagining what is finance going to look like 25 years from now. And there are interesting issues that come up. Well, one of the issues is not really to do with the success of the finance industry, but it's the image and its license to operate here, because you get this duality going on with poor people who look enviously at the finance sector and say they're bringing all our problems. They're raising our cost of living, they're raising the cost of housing, and they're spending all the money on themselves. It's not trickling out. It is trickling out. I mean, it's a massive source of wealth for both islands, but I don't think we do a very good job explaining that. And I think the finance industry needs to step up and work more collaboratively together to do systemic things to change. So, for example, we're all trying to cope with the transition plans on carbon. In Jersey, we've got a bill of about 230 million to pay for that transition. We've anted up about 30 million to pay for it. So there's a $200 million financing gap. Well, if the finance industry ought to be getting together and thinking, well, how do we turn that into a social bond of some kind? Because that's not a very big bond for the finance industry. Could we try and work together to help the island? And then suddenly you get a reputation for doing something really wonderful for the island. So there are things like that that I think we could do. For instance, education is another really important thing. Young people today looking to enter the finance industry, we need to have much better training for them, tertiary education for them. So like a mini university of the finance industry. So we're really training people to work in the island, off island. That would be a great thing for the finance industry to collaborate on and get together and make happen. Well, nature is the kind of new kid on the block in a sense. We've been 30 years getting used to climate. And little wonder now we all pretty much understand it. And there are massive businesses worldwide which are driven because of climate. So electric cars, transformation in energy, and so on. So that's like if you're at a child's party and you squeeze a balloon, right? And something pops out the other side. So the pop out then was renewable energy. What's the pop out going to be from nature? Because most people can't see what that is. That's why they don't invest in it. Well, one of the things that's going to be a pop-out, instead of renewable energy, is going to be a renewable food. It's a reimagining of our global food system. And that is already happening with the emergence of vertical farming, which is producing food inside vertical farming units. Take Dyson, for instance. It's got 14 hectares of stuff under glass, which is growing strawberries for city markets, all plucked by robots, all using solar energy, water totally recycled, no disease, no need for pesticides. It can't get in. It's amazing. So there are things like this on precision fermentation where you can fill it full of a mushroom broth. You can make hamburgers or cosmetics out of it. These are going to be big challenges to our industrialized food system. And we need to be very aware of this. We're going to see big changes happening to the pesticides and synthetic chemicals industries and the machines that are designed to put all those sprays over our land. They're going to be disrupted by weed-killing robots that kill weeds with lasers and don't need pesticides anymore. Just imagine that deploying worldwide. Goodbye pesticide industry and herbicide industry. Very disruptive, very exciting new things to invest in. That's what we need to keep our eye on. Environmental crime is big. It's billions of dollars. What is it? It's dumping waste in a bad way. It's about mining in a bad way using slavery. It's about illegal fishing, which is one of the biggest causes of fraud after drugs. And where does that money go? Think of destroying rainforests illegally, catching fish illegally. That money gets laundered, often through international finance centers. Hopefully not here in the Channel Islands, but do you know? Do you know? If you think of illegal fishing, 68% of the fishing vessels that cause illegal fishing, and it's big business, we're talking about factory ships going in and stealing fish from the coast of Africa or parts of Asia in protected areas. And what they do is they land the ships in offshore centers. The money gets laundered into property, and then they come knocking on our door, say, oh, I've sold my property empire, I want to lodge this money here. And we don't have really good KYC, knowing your client, on the environment. Because why? You say, well, we always do due diligence on crime, and do they get convicted? Well, guess what? Most people in environmental crime never get convicted. They may go to court, they're very rarely convicted, so they don't show up. And so I think we need to be much more sophisticated on that in the future.